They laughed at him. Selling air? That's the dumbest idea ever. But years later, when pollution choked cities and people struggled to breathe, they weren't laughing anymore. The boy who once had nothing built a $100 million empire, selling something everyone thought was free. This is his unbelievable story. He was just a boy from the slums, where the air was thick with dust, and opportunity was as rare as a clear blue sky. Born into poverty, he had nothing. No money, no privilege, not even a proper education. What he did have, however, was an idea. A ridiculous, impossible idea that made people laugh in his face. Selling air? Have you lost your mind? They mocked. It started as a simple thought, a question that wouldn't leave his mind. What if clean air wasn't free? He watched as pollution choked the city. Factories released thick clouds of smoke, streets were packed with honking cars, and the sky was no longer blue but a murky gray. People coughed, covered their faces with masks, and complained, but no one did anything about it. To him, the answer was obvious. If something becomes scarce, it becomes valuable. And if it's valuable, people will pay for it. He shared his idea with those around him. What if I could bottle pure, clean air and sell it? They burst into laughter. Who would be foolish enough to buy something they can get for free? Even his own family dismissed him. Stop dreaming, they told him. Get a real job. But he refused to let their disbelief kill his vision. Undeterred, he started experimenting. He collected air from the mountains, where the breeze was fresh and untouched by pollution. He sealed it in small containers and tried to sell it on the streets. People sneered. You think I'll pay for this? Some laughed so hard they couldn't breathe, which, ironically, was the exact problem he was trying to solve. Day after day, he faced rejection. Street vendors, shopkeepers, and even wealthy businessmen saw no value in his product. Come back when you have something real to sell, they told him. At times, even he questioned himself. Was he truly insane? Was this idea as foolish as everyone claimed? But deep down, he knew something others didn't. Change always starts with a crazy idea. Then, something happened. The air quality in the city worsened. Hospitals filled with patients suffering from respiratory issues. The government declared an emergency, warning citizens to stay indoors. Suddenly, breathing wasn't something people took for granted anymore. They needed clean air, and they needed it now. The same people who mocked him were now desperate for a solution, and he had one. It was time for the world to realize that air, something invisible, something they had ignored for so long, was now the most valuable resource of all. He stood on the same streets where people once laughed at him, holding the same bottles of air they once mocked. But this time, no one was laughing. He walked the streets with his bottled air, his heart filled with hope, but his pockets empty. Every rejection stung, but he kept trying. He approached local shop owners, hoping they would see the vision he saw. Look at the pollution, he argued. People need this. But they only laughed. Nobody is going to buy something they can get for free. Desperation grew as he took his idea to investors. He prepared his pitch carefully, speaking with passion about the future demand for clean air. He showed data on rising pollution levels, health risks, and the inevitable need for a solution. But the investors weren't impressed. One scoffed, "You think people will ever pay for air? That's like selling water from the ocean." Another waved him away, telling him to focus on something realistic. Even his own friends started distancing themselves. "Why are you wasting your time?" they asked. "You could be working a normal job, earning real money." It was humiliating, standing in front of people who dismissed him as a joke. He had believed in his idea with every fiber of his being, but the world refused to believe in him. As time passed, frustration began to settle in. He had spent everything he had trying to package and promote his bottled air. But with no buyers and no support, he found himself questioning everything. Was he really a fool? Was the world right about him? Doubt crept into his mind, whispering that maybe he should give up. Maybe he should stop chasing an impossible dream. He looked at the last few bottles he had left and considered throwing them away. It felt like the end, but deep inside, something wouldn't let him quit. He had come too far. If no one believed in him, then he would believe in himself even more. He took a deep breath, looking up at the smog-filled sky. The world wasn't ready to see what he saw, but one day they would. He would make them see. With renewed determination, he tightened his grip on his bottles and walked forward. He wasn't done yet. The turning point came when the city's air quality reached dangerous levels. Pollution was no longer just an inconvenience, it was a crisis. Hospitals were overwhelmed with patients suffering from respiratory issues, and the demand for clean air skyrocketed. What once seemed absurd now felt like a necessity. Seeing the shift in public concern, he refined his idea. Instead of simply bottling air as a novelty, he positioned it as a luxury necessity. He sourced air from the purest environments, mountaintops, deep forests, and remote beaches. He improved packaging, branding it as pure oxygen for a polluted world. Marketing became his weapon. He reached out to influencers, environmentalists, and health experts who recognized the growing issue of pollution. A viral campaign transformed his product from a joke into a statement. "This isn't just air, it's what survival will look like in the future," one influencer declared. The message resonated. People who once laughed at the idea now saw it as a glimpse into a dystopian reality. Soon, high-end hotels, wellness spas, and even corporate offices began stocking his bottled air for their clients. Demand surged, and orders poured in from polluted cities worldwide. Investors who once dismissed him now fought to be part of his growing empire. His business was no longer about selling air. It was about selling hope, status, and the promise of a better future. In a world where pollution was unavoidable, he had turned the most basic human need into a multi-million-dollar industry. What started as a ridiculous idea had become a revolution, and he was at the center of it all. As demand skyrocketed, he realized he needed to scale beyond just bottled air. He expanded operations, setting up purification plants that could extract and compress the purest air from untouched natural reserves. His brand was no longer just a novelty. It became a global movement. Wealthy elites flaunted their premium air bottles, and major corporations rushed to partner with him. Governments, struggling with pollution crises, sought his expertise. The business had transformed into an empire. High-end hotels, private clubs, and even hospitals began installing air dispensers, offering purified oxygen as a luxury service. His air became a status symbol. Those who could afford it basked in the privilege of breathing something cleaner than the smog-filled reality surrounding them. Investors who once laughed at him were now begging to buy shares in his booming company. His name became synonymous with innovation. He was invited to speak at global summits, his journey cited as an example of turning an impossible idea into a billion-dollar success. But with success came criticism. Many accused him of profiting off a crisis rather than solving it. Media debates raged. Was he a visionary entrepreneur or an opportunist exploiting a global problem? Ignoring the negativity, he focused on impact. He launched initiatives to plant trees, improve air quality, and develop large-scale air purification towers. His mission had evolved. It was no longer just about selling air, but about redefining the future of clean breathing. His product was no longer a joke. It was a necessity, a movement, and a legacy in the making. With his empire solidified, he turned his attention to something greater, ensuring a cleaner future for generations to come. His bottled air was no longer just a luxury product. It was the foundation of a movement that aimed to make pure air a basic human right. Using his resources, he initiated large-scale projects to combat pollution, restore forests, and develop air purification systems for public spaces. Governments and organizations that once ignored him now sought his guidance. His journey was studied in business schools as a testament to the power of bold ideas. He proved that even the most ridiculous-sounding concepts could revolutionize industries if backed by vision and determination. Despite the criticism, he stayed focused on his mission. His greatest success was not in selling air, but in challenging the world's perspective on environmental sustainability. He left behind more than a thriving business. He left behind a legacy of innovation, proving that the craziest ideas often lead to the greatest transformations. His story became a reminder that real change is created by those who dare to think differently and act fearlessly. The world needs visionaries, people who see beyond the ordinary and dare to challenge the impossible. His journey proves that the boldest ideas, no matter how crazy they seem, can shape the future. So, what's stopping you? What idea is lingering in your mind, waiting to be unleashed? Take the first step today. Believe in your vision, ignore the doubters, and push forward. The next revolutionary idea could be yours. Will you rise to the challenge?